Okay, let's dive right into this. There's an incredibly intense situation unfolding in Southeast Asia. We're looking at this conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, and it's just escalated dramatically. Really in the last few days. I mean, our sources are talking about calls for war, over 100,000 people fleeing their homes. It's genuinely shocking. And what gets me is that this situation, it's rooted in history, like much older than you might think. So in this deep dive, we're going to try and cut through all the noise. We've sifted through a whole stack of sources, really, to pull out the key nuggets of knowledge, stuff that will put you ahead in understanding what's actually going on with this regional flashpoint. Our mission here is basically to navigate all the detailed reports, the discussions, to uncover not just what's happening, on the ground, but why it's happening, and maybe uncover some of those surprising wider implications.
Yeah, and what's truly striking, I think, is just how quickly this tension, which has been simmering for ages, really has just boiled over, prompting Thailand to take the pretty drastic step of declaring martial law in 8 districts along its border. And like you said, this isn't just about lines on a map, is it? It's a huge test, a test of regional stability, international diplomacy, and in many ways, it's about the legacy of colonialism still playing out.
Right. So let's start there. July 25, 2025. Thailand declares martial law in these 8 border districts. When you hear something like that, I mean, what's the immediate thought? What does that signal and what usually pushes things to that point?
Well, declaring martial law it's a very serious move. It wasn't just a general statement either. It was specifically announced by the Chanthaburi Trat Border Defense Command. And it covers 7 districts in Chanthaburi province, plus 1 Kha Saming in Trat province. So they basically militarized a big chunk of that border region. And the official reasons cited by Thai authorities, well, they're pretty clear. Safeguarding sovereignty, territorial integrity, protecting citizens' lives and property. They explicitly framed Cambodia's actions, their use of force, as an invasion of Thai territory. That's strong language. And Thailand's acting prime minister, Phumtham Wechayachai, he didn't mince words either. He warned the conflict could escalate into a state of war. Even while saying, currently it's more like an altercation level, battling with heavy weapons. Still pretty serious.
That is a stark warning. And the sources really, they hammer home the severity, don't they? We're hearing about heavy artillery, F-16 fighter jets being used, even talk about cluster munitions. So when a border dispute gets this hot, what's the actual cost, human and military, that makes people call this the worst in over a decade?
The initial signs are deeply concerning, and the human cost is immediate and tragic. Early reports mentioned 14 Thais killed, then that number rose to 15. And crucially, 14 of those were civilians, including, incredibly sadly, an 8-year-old boy. Plus, you've got over 100,000 people evacuated from those border areas. So yeah, calling it the most serious confrontation in over a decade seems accurate. And that martial law declaration, it gives the military huge powers restricting movement, controlling communications, mobilizing resources. It's definitely meant as a deterrent, right? To signal heightened readiness and hopefully stop further Cambodian actions.
And then there's the Chakrabong Zeta Wuvanam plan being activated.
Right, you mentioned that. What exactly is that plan? It's a high-level war readiness plan. It basically mobilizes the armed forces for a potentially prolonged conflict. They last used it back in 2011 during similar clashes around Priya Vihar. So activating it now, it really signals how seriously Thailand is taking this.
Okay, so it's not just martial law, it's activating a specific war plan. That really underscores it. This isn't some new fight that just popped up, right? Our sources keep stressing how deep the roots are, going back more than a century. Can you walk us through that a bit? How did this all start?
You're absolutely right. This conflict has very deep historical roots. You have to go back really to the decline of the old Khmer Empire, maybe 9th to 15th centuries. And as it weakened, you had the Thai and Vietnamese kingdoms expanding, often into former Khmer lands. But the real turning point, the one that shapes today, was French colonization of Cambodia in the late 1800s. France basically forced Thailand-Siam, as it was known then, through treaties, to give up territories it had controlled. And the key one here is the 1907 treaty. It came with this French-drawn border map. The map was supposed to follow a natural watershed line, but it was, well, vaguely understood, kind of ambiguous in places. And that ambiguity, especially around the Priya Vihar temple area, became the seed of this whole dispute. It still haunts them.
So these ancient religious sites are really at the core of it. What is it about Priya Vihar temple specifically? Why is it such a flashpoint?
Priya Vihar is it's central. It's this incredible 11th century Hindu temple complex, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which adds another layer. Location-wise, it sits right on top of a 1,722-foot cliff in the Dengrik Mountains, which naturally form part of the border. But that ambiguity in the 1907 French map, especially around Priya-Vihar and a few other old temples like Tamuantam and Tamanom, it's allowed both sides to maintain these competing claims for generations. So these aren't just dots on a map. Our sources call them geographic flashpoints and emotional symbols. They carry huge cultural and national weight for both countries.
Okay, so if this has been dragging on for so long, surely the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, has had something to say about it. Have they ruled on this?
Oh, yes. The ICJ has been involved twice, actually, specifically over Priya-Vihar. Back in 1962, the court made a pretty landmark ruling. It awarded ownership of the temple itself to Cambodia. Their reasoning was that the 1907 map, despite maybe some ambiguity elsewhere, clearly showed the temple in Cambodian territory. Thailand had actually occupied the temple in 1954, but the ICJ said Thailand had essentially lost its claim through acquiescence. Basically, they didn't formally object to the map early enough.
Okay, so Cambodia got the temple. Did that settle things?
Not entirely. Tensions flared up again badly in 2008. That was right after Cambodia got Priya-Vihar listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Thai nationalists saw that as Cambodia unilaterally asserting sovereignty over not just the temple, but the disputed land around it. So Cambodia went back to the ICJ, and in 2013, the court reaffirmed the 1962 ruling, but also clarified. They stated that the land immediately surrounding the temple promontory was also Cambodian. But as one source puts it, that ruling still stings in Bangkok. It remains a real point of contention.
And we've seen violence flare up around these sites before, haven't we? This isn't the first time it's gotten this bad.
Definitely not. The current fighting is being called the most severe episode since 2011. Back then, there were about week-long clashes near Priya-Vihar, killed at least 15 people. Before that, you had skirmishes in 2008, right after that UNESCO listing. And you can go back even further, the ICJ had to step in during the 1960s too. And more recently, just this year, things were heating up again. There's that Cambodian soldier killed near Chongbuk back in May, and then Thai soldiers losing limbs to landmines in July. Those were like the immediate sparks this time around. It's a constant pressure cooker.
Okay, so let's zero in on the present then. What were those specific triggers in July 2025 that really pushed things over the edge this time? Sounds like a few things happened close together.
Yeah, tensions were definitely building. It really kicked off arguably back on May 28th with the killing of that Cambodian soldier near Tongbuk. That led to troop buildups on both sides. You could feel things ratcheting up. Then July 23rd, that was a key moment. A Thai soldier lost his leg stepping on a landmine. Thailand immediately claimed these were newly planted Russian-made devices. Cambodia denied it, said it was just old ordnance left over from past conflicts. Big disagreement there.
Right. Classic he said, she said.
Exactly. And then the very next day, July 24th, direct fighting breaks out. It started at the Prasat Tamwin Tom Temple Complex, another one of those historically disputed sites, and from there it just spread like wildfire. Sources say clashes erupted in about 12 different locations along that border stretch. Rapid escalation.
And the reports mentioned a serious step up in the kind of weapons being used.
Yeah.
Heavy artillery, rockets, even those F-16s you mentioned. What does that tell us? What kind of hardware are we talking about, and what does it signal about intent here?
Yeah, the escalation in firepower is undeniable. Both sides are using heavy artillery, rockets, small arms fire. But Thailand deploying F-16s, that's significant. They reportedly used them to target 6 Cambodian military installations, conducted airstrikes. Cambodia, in turn, reportedly shelled several Thai border towns, and there are reports of them using BM-21 rockets. Those are multiple launch rocket systems, sometimes hitting civilian areas, tragically. And both sides rushed extra infantry regiments to the front. They kept jets on standby. It all signals, a readiness for potentially prolonged engagement, not just a quick border skirmish. And again, Thailand activating that Chakrabangse Bhuvannath plan fits right into that picture of serious preparation.
Okay, this leads to a really grim aspect. The accusations flying back and forth about targeting civilians, targeting religious sites, it sounds like a total blame game. How do people on the outside, or even us listening, make sense of that? Is this kind of blame game just standard in these situations, or is something making it particularly murky here?
It is deeply troubling, and yes, the mutual accusations make getting objective facts incredibly difficult. Thailand points the finger at Cambodian forces, saying they fired those BM-21 rockets into civilian areas, specifically mentioning the Phanom Dong Rak Hospital in Sirin province being targeted. Cambodia fires back just as hard. Their Ministry of National Defense accuses Thailand of brutal and illegal military aggression. They claim Thai jets dropped bombs, maybe even cluster munitions, which Thailand denies, destroying civilian buildings like a pagoda, a health center, a gas station, a market. They even claim parts of the Preah Vihear temple itself were damaged by Thai actions. Thailand flatly denies targeting religious sites.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a classic, intense blame game. And it serves purposes for both sides, right? Domestically, it justifies their own military actions. Internationally, it's trying to win sympathy and paint the other side as the aggressor. It makes mediation incredibly hard and leaves observers like us often struggling to verify claims. It's a gray area, definitely.
And beneath all the military strategy and the blame game, there's this immense human cost. The sources paint a really stark picture: casualties, huge numbers of people displaced. What does this actually mean for the ordinary people caught right in the middle?
The human cost is, it's devastating. We mentioned the Thai casualties, 15 killed, 14 of them civilians, including that young boy. One specific incident sounds horrific. A Cambodian rocket attack hitting a petrol station, killing 11 civilians and 1 soldier right there. In Cambodia, they've confirmed at least 1 monk was killed, 5 others injured, they say, due to Thai airstrikes.
It's awful, an 8-year-old boy. It really brings it home, doesn't it?
It does. It puts a face on the tragedy.
And those displacement numbers are just huge. Over 100,000 people running for their lives.
Yeah.
It's a massive crisis on its own. What are the conditions like for these people? Are they literally just grabbing what they can and leaving everything else behind?
Yeah, the scale of displacement is defining this crisis. Sources consistently mention over 100,000 Thais evacuated. Some figures go as high as 138,000. They've fled from 4 border provinces, crammed into nearly 300 temporary shelters. On the Cambodian side, estimates are around 20,000 evacuated from Preah Vihear province. And yes, reports describe villagers just grabbing essential belongings, fleeing out of fear, especially fear of fighting escalating at night. All the official land crossings are shut down. Thai authorities even urged their citizens to leave Cambodia if they could. It's a picture of sudden, terrifying upheaval.
And what about just daily life, infrastructure? Hospitals, schools, basic services, are they getting hit too? This must be completely turning communities upside down.
Absolutely. The fighting has caused profound disruption. Hospitals near the conflict zones, like that Phanom Dong Rak hospital, had to be partially evacuated or were reportedly hit. Cambodia, as we said, claims Thai actions destroyed a pagoda, a health center, a gas station, a market, basic civilian infrastructure. It highlights this profound disruption to daily life and basic services. And the high civilian casualty numbers, plus these accusations of targeting civilian sites, well, that could easily lead to international condemnation, potentially even investigations into violations of international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions.
So looking beyond the immediate fighting, what does all this damage and displacement mean long-term for these border communities?
The long-term consequences are really serious. Mass displacement, closed borders. It hits livelihoods hard, disrupts education, strains healthcare systems, frays social bonds. You could see prolonged humanitarian needs, maybe even longer-term internal migration issues if people can't or won't go back. And the cross-border informal trade, which is a lifeline for many in these areas, that's just stopped dead. It creates a huge economic hole.
Yeah, that economic angle is crucial. This isn't just contained to the border zones, is it? It's sending ripples through the wider economies. We're hearing about billions in trade hits to tourism. Let's dig into that economic fallout.
Right. The economic impact is significant. Bilateral trade between Thailand and Cambodia is estimated at around $1.2 billion annually. It's now severely disrupted. 7 key border crossings are closed. That includes the really critical Sakeo corridor, which handles a huge volume of goods. And closing those routes has reportedly led to a 30% surge in transportation costs. Goods now have to be rerouted, often through Laos and Vietnam, which is much slower and more expensive. This puts Thailand's $3 billion trade surplus with Cambodia at risk. Think about energy exports they've pretty much halted, which forces Cambodia to look elsewhere, maybe Vietnam or Singapore, for energy supplies. And that directly benefits companies like Malaysia's Petronas or Vietnam's PetroVietnam, while hurting Thailand's state-owned PTT group. It shifts things around.
And tourism. Well, that's massive for both countries, especially places like Preah Vihear. What's the damage looking like there?
Tourism has taken a huge hit, as you'd expect. Thailand reported seeing a 15% decline in Chinese arrivals, and China is a massive source of tourists for them. Meanwhile, tourism, specifically to the Preah Vihear temple in Cambodia, apparently saw a dramatic 70% drop. Just collapsed. Plus, all that cross-border traffic for gambling, informal shopping, day trips, it's gone too, hitting lots of small businesses hard. Thai tourism operators are sounding the alarm, warning about severe fallout. Small hotels near the border are especially vulnerable. And we've seen this before, right? History shows that declaring martial law tends to really spook tourists and damage the industry significantly.
Okay, so while a lot of the economic news is grim, trade down, tourism down, our sources point out something interesting. There might actually be winners emerging from this crisis. What's the unexpected economic angle here?
Yeah, that's a key insight from the deep dives, actually. Conflict is obviously terrible for tourism, for consumer goods, but it seems to be a boom for defense and logistics sectors. We're seeing a direct link between the rising military tensions and stock market performance for defense contractors. Companies like Thai Aerospace Industries and Siam Defense Systems, for example, have apparently outperformed Thailand's main stock index, the SETI, by about 15% just since May 2025.
Wow, 15%.
Yeah, and it seems driven by this 20% year-over-year surge in defense spending that we're seeing in both countries. They're buying more military gear. At the same time, logistics firms that specialize in rerouting goods around the closed borders, they're reportedly capitalizing on that 30% premium we talked about. And even cybersecurity and surveillance firms are seeing more demand, so it creates this split market. Investors are being advised, apparently, to steer clear of stocks with heavy Cambodia exposure, especially tourism and maybe beverages. One source mentioned the beverage company Carabao Group facing potential annual losses of around $340 million because of the disruption. And zooming out, this disruption could signal a long-term realignment of regional economic dependencies. We might see new trade networks forming, perhaps more fragmented ones. Plus, that surge in defense spending points to a broader trend, maybe a militarization and securitization of the region's economies, possibly diverting money away from long-term development.
That economic disruption is huge. But looking towards any kind of resolution, our sources mention another potential economic layer: untapped natural resources. Does that massive potential wealth complicate things? Or could it maybe offer a path forward?
That's a really critical point you've picked up on. There's talk of an underlying economic incentive here, specifically the potential to unlock something like $557 billion in untapped gas and rare earth resources, believed to be located near that disputed Preah Vihear area.
$500 billion.
Exactly. Huge potential value. This could cut both ways, couldn't it? It could intensify the competition, make both sides dig their heels in even harder to control that wealth, or maybe, paradoxically, it could provide a powerful incentive for cooperation if they could somehow agree on a joint development framework. But that's a big if. It definitely adds another powerful economic dimension to this already tangled territorial fight.
Right. So given how serious this is, with the fighting, the displacement, these huge economic stakes, you'd hope diplomacy is working overtime. But the sources seem to suggest diplomacy is struggling, especially within the regional group, ASEAN. What's actually happening on the diplomatic front?
Well, the immediate diplomatic fallout was pretty severe. Ambassadors got expelled. Cambodia formally downgraded relations with Thailand. A sharp break. And Cambodia then made what seems like a strategic move to internationalize the dispute. They filed a new complaint with the ICJ, the World Court, and very publicly called for a ceasefire, trying to rally international pressure on Thailand.
Okay, but what about ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations? Isn't that group supposed to mediate these kinds of regional flare-ups? Why aren't they stepping in more forcefully?
ASEAN has tried to step in. The current ASEAN chair, Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, did propose a ceasefire. And Cambodia agreed to it, but then they publicly blamed Thailand for, they claimed, withdrawing its initial support for that ceasefire. Thailand's position seems to be that they agree to a ceasefire in principle, but only under appropriate on-the-ground conditions. And they keep accusing Cambodia of continuing attacks. So you have this impasse, and it really does critically expose ASEAN's limitations, as one source put it. We're seeing an absence of a unified ASEAN response. Their whole model relies on consensus, everyone has to agree. And that process seems maybe insufficient for high-stakes security crises like this one. It's just too slow, maybe too toothless when things get really bad.
That's interesting. So if the regional body is struggling, what about the big international players, the U.S., China? Are they getting involved? What are their angles here?
The wider international community is definitely concerned, but their approaches differ. The UN Security Council is expected to hold an emergency meeting soon because Cambodia requested it, so it's on the global agenda. The United States has voiced deep concern, called for the fighting to stop, for civilians to be protected, and urged peaceful dialogue. But it's complicated for the U.S., right? Thailand is historically a U.S. ally, but relations have been cooler lately. Sources say Thailand is now closer to China and has had an acrimonious relationship with the Trump administration. That might limit U.S. leverage.
Okay. And China?
China has close ties with Cambodia. They've also expressed concern, encouraged dialogue. Given their relationship, China could potentially be a key mediator here. Plus, remember, China has been backing Cambodia's military modernization efforts. That adds another layer. Japan and the EU have also called for de-escalation, generally urging calm. So what you see are these really different diplomatic strategies playing out. Cambodia wants to bring in the world, the UN, the ICJ, get international eyes on it. Thailand seems to prefer keeping it more contained, wanting to manage it on its own terms, using those on-the-ground conditions as leverage before agreeing to talks. And that fundamental difference makes it really hard for any outside mediator to find common ground. It creates this diplomatic deadlock. And there's a fascinating broader geopolitical ripple effect mentioned too.
Oh.
Apparently, countries like Vietnam and Indonesia have sort of leveraged the crisis to secure favorable U.S. trade deals. It suggests maybe a potential erosion of ASEAN's collective security and economic integration credibility. You might be seeing a more fragmented Southeast Asia emerge, where individual countries prioritize their own bilateral deals and external alignments over regional unity when a crisis hits.
Wow. Okay, so that feeds into the regional power balance. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
There's clearly a big military difference here. Thailand is much stronger militarily, yet Cambodia keeps pushing, keeps engaging. Why? What's the thinking there?
Yeah, the military imbalance is stark. Thailand's defense budget is over $5.5 billion. They have around 360,000 active personnel, advanced gear like F-16s, even a small aircraft carrier. Cambodia, their budget's maybe $1.3 billion. About 124,000 troops, no real fighter aircraft capability, very limited naval power, so purely in conventional military terms, Cambodia can't win a war against Thailand. That disparity makes a large-scale, all-out war less likely, perhaps, because the outcome seems predetermined.
Right. But like you said, Cambodia isn't backing down. Sources talk about them using asymmetric tactics. Can you break that down? What does that mean in practice? And why do it if you know you can't win head-on?
It seems Cambodia is pursuing a strategy using asymmetric tactics. Think of these as calculated maneuvers intended to achieve political and psychological objectives rather than aiming for a military victory on the battlefield. They often involve low-risk, high-visibility actions, things like maybe small drone incursions, brief artillery exchanges, border provocations. The goal isn't to defeat the Thai army. It's more likely to apply political pressure on Thailand, maybe stir up nationalist feelings back home in Cambodia, and keep the international spotlight on the border dispute, all without provoking Thailand into a full-scale, overwhelming response that Cambodia couldn't handle. And remember that China factored Beijing backing Cambodia's military upgrades, providing things like QW-3 Vanguard surface-to-air missiles. That adds a geopolitical edge and potentially emboldens Cambodia a bit, while also fueling regional arms competition.
That raises a really key question. How much of this is actually about domestic politics, especially inside Cambodia? Is this conflict serving a purpose back home?
Domestic politics seem to be a major driver, particularly in Cambodia. You've got the new prime minister, Hun Manet Hun Sen's son. He's relatively new in the top job, likely needs to consolidate his power, manage rivalries within the elite, and establish his own authority. This conflict can serve as an instrument for domestic legitimacy. It allows him to rally people around the flag, adopt a firm nationalist stance, and unify different groups under the banner of the ruling Cambodian People's Party, the CPP. It's a classic political move in some ways.
Makes sense. Play the nationalist card to shore up support.
Exactly. And China's military support adds that crucial external element, potentially giving Cambodia more confidence to take these actions, knowing they have a powerful backer.
But it's not just Cambodia, right? Thailand has its own internal political stuff going on, too. Could instability on both sides be feeding this?
Absolutely. Thailand's political situation is far from stable itself. They've got economic problems, the whole drama around the suspension of the previous prime minister, Pita, last year, and a caretaker government still sort of in place. That kind of instability can create openings. Maybe the military sees a chance to reassert its influence, or perhaps politicians see value in rallying nationalist sentiment during uncertain times. And one source even pointed to this ongoing row between the two political dynasties, the Hun family in Cambodia and the Shinawatra family, still influential in Thailand, as another factor potentially fueling the conflict. They mentioned Thaksin Shinawatra, the former Thai PM, making a very high-profile visit to a refugee center near the border recently. That probably didn't help calm things down, adds another layer of personal and political rivalry.
So, wrapping this up, what does it all mean? We've really seen how this conflict is this, Perfect storm. You got colonial legacies, modern geopolitics, resource competition, domestic power plays, all crashing together. It's been a real deep dive into the kind of complex forces that shape these global hotspots.
Yeah, if you try and connect all those dots, this crisis really lays bare how deeply tangled these things are: historical grievances, national pride, straight-up economic incentives. And the fact that regional diplomacy, like through ASEAN, seems to be struggling, and that other nearby countries are maybe even using the crisis opportunistically, it does signal potentially a shift towards a more fragmented Southeast Asia, a region where individual national interests and bilateral deals might start overriding that idea of collective security and cooperation.
So given all these layers we've unpacked, from that border dispute stretching back centuries to the very real human crisis happening right now and this complex geopolitical chess game being played, here's a final thought for you to consider. If these two nations, Thailand and Cambodia, so closely linked by geography, by culture, by history, if they can't find a lasting, peaceful way through this, what does that suggest about other simmering disputes around the world? Especially the ones where there might be billions or even trillions in untapped natural resources lying underneath the contested ground. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?